This will be recorded, and we will send out the recording to those who have registered as well. There is a Q&A function that should be working. Can't see it right now from my point of view, but some of you may have some questions already. Of course, there's a lot of exciting things going on in this book and claim community. Today, we're going to be chatting mostly about the upcoming work plan of the book and claim community, and then also the principles and best practices document, which we are super excited about and was the primary motivation for us to get everyone together today for the first community-wide public book and claim community webinar of 2024. So welcome and thank you very much for your attendance. We really appreciate it. The agenda for today is simple, a simple 4-step, but going to be full of lots of engaging content. Starting with just a kind of a reintroduction of who we are. Many of you may have joined us for some of our last year's programming. This year, we've amplified the work and are looking forward to an action-packed year. We want to highlight a few of our original kind of founding ethos elements of the book and claim community, why we're here, what we're doing, what we're focusing on, who we are. And then also moving into some of the principles and best practices documentation, some of that work, reviewing some of the actual text, as well as hearing from some of the contributors who were able to join us over the last 6 months and help us put together this key set of mileposts for the community. We're going to dive into some of the content, and then we're going to be able to have a little bit of time for Q&A towards the end to be able to open it up and hopefully have a good discussion about a few of the points that you may have brought up. And if you don't have any points, which I imagine you will, we'll bring some up ourselves maybe and have a good conversation at the end of the meeting. So a quick introduction. I'm Quentin Barnes. I'm the program manager for market-based measures at SSC. I will let my other colleagues introduce themselves, but just a reminder that Book and Claim Community is a joint initiative between RMI and Smart Freight Center. We are co-chairs of the Secretariat of the Book and Claim Community, and it's been a really pleasure to be able to leverage all of the expertise and experience that RMI has in the sector, as well as the expertise of my colleagues in Smart Freight Center, to really bring together the richness of this challenge in this community. We compose the Secretariat. We're also joined by our governing board from year one, as well as 4 new exciting governing board members this year. We called them out in the newsletter. We really appreciate them joining and adding their energy to this second year that we launched just a month ago. And this year we actually brought in a couple of strategic partners as well. Get into a little bit more of why it's hopefully a little bit apparent, but together with some of these other community organizations, we add just an overall richness of coverage, of expertise and experience that is really key to success for the goals from year one, as well as what we're trying to accomplish in year 2. Taking it back a step, we just wanted to kind of reiterate as we reintroduce to some of you who may not be as familiar with our work, kind of how we're focusing some of our time. So we grabbed 3 values that we continued from last year. One of the values is to serve as a central hub. We do really want to try and bring together the various efforts of the community. We are about 265, I think, organizations, unique organizations who have connected in with this work, and that's amazing. but it's also a challenge to bring those diverse points of view together, and we hope that we're doing so, and we continue to do so as best we can. We are a central hub. We know we are not the central hub, and that there are other gravity centers in and around the book and claim community, and that's a very important thing. Reducing duplication. To that point, we know there's plenty of work and amazing work going on in other areas. One of the things that we are really trying to do is highlight the alignment and the consensus in the book and claim community, as well as in use of our resources, not duplicate other efforts that are happening elsewhere. What can we leverage in this group to bring the whole community together and be able to incorporate those other efforts? Communicating and advocating. That was a key, absolute key value from last year, something we bring into this year, one of the reasons why we're here. And so we added this year drive acceptance. It's especially in a year of a lot of reporting and target activity. After having established ourselves in the first year and having had the luck and the privilege to be able to work with many of you, we really want to drive acceptance for book and claim. We want people to be able to make the high quality, high integrity value chain decarbonization activities, procurement, and be able to have that reflected in their official documentation, inventories, and target setting. It's a very key point of this year. And guide climate alignment, finally. There are many different opinions about what should be booked and claimed, and we have been trying to take the point of view and the responsibility to step back and be able to provide a little bit of guidance around, hey, how can we kind of optimize this entire transportation and heavy transport sector to be able to make sure that we're doing the best we can get towards international targets, international agreements, and help each of your organizations reach your decarbonization goals. So we're still working around the 4 work areas that we discussed last year, and the one is reporting and targets, also have certification, registries and related applications, and capacity building and communication. As you may note, these subjects are so intertwined that a lot of our work touches on all of them, especially an effort such as the book and claim principles and best practices. That is something that is broad-based and actually does touch on all of them. But even an expert group that we were able to start last year, on the subject of registry interoperability, it really does draw on the other sectors, the other work areas as well, to gain strength, to gain understanding. You need to know how the other operators work in book and claim systems before the tracking and tracing, for example, which would happen in that registry example, as well as the book and claim systems that would be happening downstream, such as the accounting and reporting. And so we look forward to drawing out the strengths of each of these work areas and the perspectives of each of these work areas as we continue this work for the rest of the year. Some of the highlights that we will be working on over the next year. And just a reminder, we started our first year, was started in June of last year. So that's why we are talking about year 2 as being the next 12 months. We're going to continue to do community level events, and we promise to do more of them. So we're going to be doing at least 1 quarterly meeting community-wide, such as this. And then we're going to be continuing our community newsletters. So many of you may have heard about this meeting today via our newsletter. We just would love to make sure that you could sign up there if you haven't. It is our very easy to remember, if not long, web address, bookandclaimcommunity.org/newsletter, and we'd appreciate you. We appreciate you tuning in. We're going to continue with expert level work. So the book and claim principles and best practices itself was, a product of working with many of the leaders in this space and book and claim system practitioners in this space. Similarly, the registry interoperability expert group. And we're going to continue to make a couple of medium or small groups to be able to take care of specific issues throughout the next 12 months. One of those groups, of course, may be mode specific, as noted here. We're hoping in the next couple of months to kick off a road specific mode group. And that is in part in answer to many of you lobbying for many road practitioners who are using a book and claim chain of custody to make dents in their decarbonization plans. And we're continuing to try and expand this work. We are just a small organization, and so we could really use any of your support to amplify. Many of you signed on to the principles and best practices work. You were sharing it with your colleagues. This is amazing. And we're also trying to leverage any opportunities we can over the next year to get out, be in webinars, attend conferences, and raise our hand not only as RMI or SFC, but raise our hand as the Secretariat of the Book and Claim community and make sure everyone knows how truly aligned, how truly important this work is, and reach new audiences. Luckily, as somebody said to me yesterday, book and claim is a term that people know now, and that's an amazing thing. Now, this next year, we really hope that they can see how to really fold it into their operations on a day-to-day basis. So really appreciate you being here. We're going to turn the corner into discussing the principles and best practices document. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to kind of reintroduce the community. And now I'm going to let one of my Secretariat colleagues from RMI introduce themselves and the next subject.
Great, thanks everyone. Hi, my name is Laura Hutchinson. I'm a manager at RMI and co-lead this effort with the SFC team. I'll dive into some more context for why we developed this principles and best practices document in partnership with many of you. And hopefully you all recognize the value of this and can take this and integrate into your existing or planned book and claim solutions as a follow-up from this discussion today. So first, taking us back a step, why did we do this? Why did we feel that it was important to develop a document and frame it as principles and best practices? I think we're all here because we recognize that book and claim systems are really promising value chain approach. They allow for us to connect supply and demand in challenging circumstances and allow for capital to flow, allow voluntary interventions to speed up the deployment of critical technologies, both in a transport context and then also potentially beyond. And adherence to a fundamental set of common principles and best practices can streamline progress towards delivering these pieces. It has the ability to deconflict various solutions that are out there in the market today, has the potential to allow buyers to come to the table with a better fundamental understanding of the connectivity between existing efforts, has the ability to help us deliver a bit more cohesion and ultimately receive kind of more formal recognition for these types of value chain decarbonization approaches. So that's why we're here. That's why we felt it was valuable for us to develop this document with all of you this year. Next slide, please. So to that end, the primary objectives of this document were to develop a jointly agreed reference point document or resource for all book and claim solutions for heavy transport. In particular, this document serves to 1, synthesize existing best practices, 2, guide newcomers towards relevant resources, 3, address and clarify consistencies between existing efforts, 4, address concerns and doubts about book and claim systems to folks that may not be fully on board yet in terms of the value of this approach. And 5, identify outstanding needs to make book and claim solutions even more credible and effective. Next slide, please. So when did we put this together? We started developing this document in earnest in January. So did some scoping and initial draft development. And then we had a number of convenings in partnership and deep discussion with our contributors to this document, went through a number of different rounds, and then ultimately got the document to a point where all of us felt comfortable with the core tenets and in particular the principles, and went through a sign-on process with many of you. And then we delivered the final document in late June, as many of you saw, and now we're here today discussing and hopefully generating even more momentum behind this content. Next slide, please. Great. So as I mentioned, we have two separate tiers of folks that contributed to and are helping to emphasize the content in this document. First were our core working group that helped us sculpt and refine the content and fundamentally build this document from the bottom up to make sure that it reflects all of the different points of view across value chains and across transport modes and current and future applications of book and claim across heavy transport. So in terms of contributors, to date, 23 contributing individuals have signed on to this document, and 11 organizations have indicated their support and were, with us every step of the way to create this document start to finish. On the supporting category, many of you have raised your hand to say, yes, I also agree with what's in this document, even though you may have not have been with us every step of the way in developing it, which is incredibly important. And we definitely see the supporting category as helping strengthen the applicability of this work beyond, the remit of the working group that developed the detailed content. So thank you to those of you who have already indicated your support for the document, and we actually, onto our next slide, intend to open up that ability to sign on in a supporting category again, because we really do see the value of having more and more folks emphasize the relevance of this content and use it as a starting point for discussion and emphasize the fact that we're all kind of moving in the same direction as practitioners and designers of book and claim systems. So next slide, please. So as I said before, we are opening up this supporting indication via the form that is linked in this slide, but we'll also put it in the chat here. So we're opening up this ability to sign on as an individual or also as an organization until the end of the day on July 25th to try to build an even larger coalition of folks that emphasize that the findings here are a helpful starting point, discussion starter, movement towards more coordination and consistency in book and claim solutions. Great, and with that, I will now invite the speakers that we've invited to join us today to come online. We're going to have a couple of folks join us in discussion that were in our contributing group and hear from them directly as to kind of how the process went, as well as why this document and the process behind it was important to them and how they intend to use this as practitioners that are thinking about these systems day to day. Fantastic. And we'll start with Lisa Newman-Wise, who is an internal sustainability leader at Deloitte US. Lisa, would love to hear a few words from you.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks all for putting this together and to those in the audience for participating today. We have been participating in the book and claim community since the outset, and decided that this group, and in particular this document, was important to contribute to, because while we have been actively involved in purchasing environmental attributes or book and claim units, or call it any number of different items that are out in the market today, and feel really good about our purchases, the considerations that we evaluate for making decisions, how we are reporting on our purchases. I had realized that there was a real gap in the market for organizations looking to better understand sort of how to work through the entire chain of an evaluation, a contract, the disclosure, et cetera. And so we're really pleased to be able to contribute and support in this document. I've had many conversations with our clients and with peers about how to, and they were eager to learn, from us. But I think it's really important to have a collective perspective as we look to influence and recommend to the standards bodies how this topic should evolve. I hope that you find it useful. And Laura, I'll pass it to others for additional comments.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And Andre, would love to hear from you. Andre is the senior director at the newly formed NGO called the Center for Green Market Acceleration, or GMA for short. And we've been partnering for years on SABA and other related initiatives. Andre, to you.
Thanks, Laura. I'm very pleased to be here today. Laura, it's the Center for Green Market Activation, but it's a brand new nonprofit, so everybody can be excused for not knowing the full terminology. But we have been, while we're brand new as a group, the folks that work at GMA through various predecessor organizations have been involved in book and claim initiatives for quite some time. So we are partnering with RMI and EDF on the Sustainable Aviation Buyers Alliance, and then also working with the Aspen Institute on the Zero Emissions Maritime Buyers Alliance, both of which leverage book and claim systems to drive decarbonization in these hard to abate sectors. And then alongside this, we are seeking to expand the model to other sectors. And so for that reason, we were really thrilled to be part of the book and claim community and contribute to this really great document because it speaks directly to the kind of work that we're doing. And I want to commend the Smart Freight Center and RMI for really shepherding this process through. It was a nice process in terms of integrating sort of the best of what's happening today while also elevating and expanding our common understanding of this issue. I think the document for us so far has been most helpful as we think about standing up new initiatives. So we're looking into heavy duty trucking, for example, and then also low carbon cement and concrete. And so these principles and best practices inform our own thinking, but also probably even more importantly, they help us bring others along as we seek to grow these initiatives. So when we talk about things like preventing double claiming or being conscious of regulatory additionality or the use of high quality registries, it's not just us making those proclamations, it reflects the consensus input of this really great group of experts, which is really quite helpful. And I'll also just quickly note that while the document is really geared towards heavy transport, we have found it to be highly relevant for other sectors as well. So as we look at cement and concrete and potentially chemicals, we are finding that these principles are highly transferable to those sectors too. So all in all, I think it's great work, very useful, and I will now pass it on to one of the other panelists.
Thank you so much, Andre. And now to Adam Kirby, who's a sustainability manager at the International Sustainability and Carbon Certification System, or ISCC. Adam.
Thanks so much, Lara. So hi, everybody. Great to be here. Adam Kirby, generally supported by a colleague, Thomas Bock. We've been engaged with the community for quite some time, many months now. And initially, we got engaged simply on the basis of knowledge and awareness. I think as some of the other individuals mentioned, there was just a lack of knowledge in the space overall. This is something we recognized in certification systems across all industries, not just heavy transport, as Andre mentioned. But really, ISCC also signing on as a strategic partner, I think will continue to build the knowledge base across the globe, and something we are very proud and very happy to be aligned with the organization on. But really, I think it's quite impressive. This group has really worked cohesively and collaboratively to create a very strong document and very strong guidance. I think this provides the necessary guide to help bring alignment to a very new and a very rapidly developing industry, which I think we can all agree upon. And moreover, all of the collaborators are working in very different spaces with book and claim, with registries, different backgrounds, but I think a big value of this initiative, of the document, and of the community itself is to bring these global players, the industry leaders, together, really into the same metaphorical room to have a conversation to line the best path forward. As really, in a sense, we're all working towards the same aim, the same mission, regardless of where we sit in the chain. And to a bit of a humble brag on the collaborators, the stakeholders, and most especially the Secretariat bringing us all together, I think the individuals working here and within this meeting are really some of the best of the best. And I think that's very strongly reflected in the best practices document, which is why ISCC continues to support and remain engaged. And as Quentin mentioned earlier, I think book and claim is now a term people recognize and can understand what that comes from. So I hope that this community and this document continues to support and bring cause towards that understanding. But thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Adam. And now passing it over to William Boatwright, who's a senior commercial manager in the climate solutions team at Norden. William.
Thank you. Yeah, so we are for those of you who don't know, we're a ship owner and operator with around 500 dry bulk and product tankers, and we've been working with book and claim even through the Smart Freight Center during the initial piloting for the market-based measures framework. And for us, it's been a bit of a challenging road because you have a lot of different initiatives that had started popping up, and there was very little alignment between them all, where now I think having this document and having a lot of the terms even defined really helps us to kind of harmonize the way we speak about things. I think the document's also really helpful for us to use it with clients to show them, this isn't something that we've just made up ourselves, that there is a lot of knowledge that's going behind this, and it's kind of bridges the gap where it's easy to read, but it also gets into some technical details. So I think for us, it was really exciting to work on it, and we're really happy to support this initiative and the other initiatives that we're continuing to work on.
Great, thank you so much, William. And last but certainly not least, Adam Klauber, who's the Vice President for Sustainability and Digital Supply Chain at World Energy. Adam.
Thank you, Laura. And yeah, thank you, RMI. Thank you, Smart Freight Center, for advancing this agenda. World Energy is a renewable fuels producer, and book and claim is critical to our business model. Our customers, actually, the companies that use sustainable fuels, often cannot pay the full premium themselves. So we need to unlock the value chain and other players, and book and claim, and including scope 3 contributions, is a way to cover operational costs that airlines, for example, in aviation, can't pay themselves. So we have seen this has been a challenge. We appreciate that there has been some existing guidance. For example, from the Roundtable for Sustainable Biomaterials, there's a book and claim manual, but we really needed something that's higher level that could help to educate our stakeholders and our customers and have them gain confidence that these transactions are valid and have been vetted by a broader community, including key NGOs that have been able to weigh in to make this solid. So with this trust, we can build a business, we can make and convince investors to build new plants. This is really at the heart of how we can grow and accelerate energy transition in harder to abate industries.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Adam, and all of our speakers for tuning in and for sharing their perspective on this work and for contributing as key folks. Now I'll pass it on to my colleague Esther, who will give us a brief overview of the actual content within this document, and then we'll conclude with a Q&A and a few final remarks. Esther, on to you.
Thank you, Laura. Hey, everyone, this is Esther. Being with the book and claim community since day one, and really a pleasure to lead this work with our Secretariat team and see it being published. And thank you again to all the contributors and speakers for all your insights. And again, we're really grateful for all the engagement with you and many others in this process. All right, going into the content. I think I would love to walk you through the main content briefly, but please feel free to put any of your comment in the Q&A chat box. Colleagues will help monitor the chat and we'll make sure to answer them shortly. If we can go to the next slide, please. I want to start us with a general framing. First of all, I would like to note that this is not a standard document, and we've been trying to avoid the usage of the standard-like languages and making the best attempt to keep them simple, straightforward, and hopefully easy for you all to read. With that in mind, we clarified the definitions of the terms we use, principles and best practices here. To help with our document and our conversation around it. The principles are the fundamental statement that apply to all booking claim systems across all transportation mode. And on the other hand, the best practices are the recommended actions that you can adopt to align with these principles closely. And they offer really practical examples, and we tailor them to different stakeholder roles or depending on your position in the value chain. We understand that the best practices might just be a snapshot of today, and also understand that as the market evolves, so will these best practices, and they will be adapting to new opportunities and challenges. We understand also that folks might have some different interpretations of terminologies that we use in our conversations. So we added additional footnotes for any of the key terms throughout this document, and also at the end. Would highly recommend you all to give them a read and check your alignment with these key terms. And we will continue to welcome your feedback to this document, whether it's on terminology, content, logistics, or any others. Feel free to reach out to us at our Secretariat email. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Before we get into the principles, just a quick look at the three sections that we structured this document in. First one is about the fundamental system elements. I think they lay the groundwork for building a system. And the second one are the core functionalities that we think are important to ensure the system operates efficiently. The last one is additional principles that focus on the transparency, the governance, and collaborations to make sure that we're optimizing for credibility and functions. These sections build on each other and create overall a comprehensive framework. Now, if we can go to the next slide, I'll get into a bit more exciting content. The first section is around the fundamental system elements, and again, they emphasize the importance of of a couple elements. And for example, the first one emphasized the importance of using independent certifications that can ensure the environmental attributes of fuel and/or services are certified appropriately. The second one highlights the importance of the systems that refer to and align with the normative documents where they exist. We shared some examples of these documents in the best practices, covering broad chain of custody model, booking claim standards, transport-specific frameworks, and most specific documents, noting that there are other documents that might still be in development phase at the moment. The last principle in this section, we want to highlight the importance of using credible registries to ensure that the issuance, transfer, and retirement of the certificate is recorded within them. So this is the overview of this first one. If we can go to the next slide. The second section is around the core system functionalities to ensure that the systems can work efficiently. And the first one around double counting, one of our favorite topics. There are three main scenarios: double issuance. I'll give a brief example, which is the duplicate certificates if they're created for the same intervention or solution. Second scenario is double claiming, where you might have multiple parties claiming for the same certificates, and there is double use, where you might utilize a single certificate repeatedly for different purposes by the same organization or party. To prevent all of these, we need really everyone to work together. And we have listed some best practices for different stakeholder roles to consider. So we definitely recommend giving it a read. The next one on ensuring additionality, that one, we have a definition for additionality in our document, which we reference as a matrix that evaluates whether the emission reductions or the profile of that intervention would have occurred absent of that intervention or that creation of the certificate. And we also defined specifically the regulatory additionality assesses whether that an activity or intervention is already required by and used towards a regulatory obligation. That being said, we understand that there are many ongoing conversations around additionality criteria and how to implement them. So in this principle, high level, we encourage everyone to strive to a commonly understood and accepted additionality criteria and adhere to the agreed upon ones that in different booking claim systems, and make sure that these environmental attributes are credibly substantiating a voluntary claim by clarifying its relation to the compliance obligations. The last one in this section is around enabling multiple claims. This is in accordance with GCP. Multiple claims can exist for a single intervention if they're claimed by actors at different points in the value chain, and recommending them to mirror the accounting and reporting norms for emissions in the conventional transportation value chain. All right, so all these functionalities help maintain the integrity and the efficiency of the system. If we can go to the next section, please. It has a couple more. We'll put them into two slides. The first one on optimizing credibility and functions, we focus on robust governance. This is to simply make sure that all the decision-making process are upholding the collective interest of the system. For example, how you're actively avoiding conflict of interest. Are you requiring third-party and independent auditors? Or we also recommend you to consider incorporate a dispute resolution processes. For those who might not be familiar with these process, we definitely recommend to take a read in the best practices. The next one is on data accuracy. This is very essential as others to how can we ensure that we're using data accurately in every step of the chain of custody model to properly reflect the characteristics of the fuel and or services. We have recommended a consistent methodology for accounting the GHG emissions and ensure that the data granularity is uniform across the value chain, and a couple others. So would definitely recommend giving it a read in the best practices as well. Next one, transparency. About the requirements and functionalities. We mentioned transparency a lot, and here specifically, I think we mentioned transparency around the methodology, standards, or any references that the system uses to calculate or reflect the attributes, how you're aggregating the metadata of the certificates, and any requirements that you have for participants to engage in this system. And those are all the important documents that we think would needs to be transparent for all, overall to enhance the trust and the accountabilities within the system and across. If we can go to the next one, please. The last two, but not the least, we have the principle 10, which is on the accurately procure and transparently report certificates. pretty straightforward. We think that participants should procure certificates to their transport mode and to mirror your organization's transportation activity, and disclose a complete and verified GC emissions, and specify how this certification is playing a role in your general climate disclosure. The next one on collaborations. This is always encouraged, as you are aware there are many risks in the system and process systems that we can mitigate through collaborations, and how can we promote the exchange of informations to increase the data comparability. Those are all very important efforts, and giving some examples, these efforts can be complemented through registries, to have both built-in controls for data and collaborations among the registries that can potentially mitigate the risk of double issuance and other double counting scenarios. All right, I hope this is not too much of a content, trying to keep it brief and simple with some examples. If we can go to the next slides. We have designed a little bit of a reading guide for you based on your practitioner role. So I know we have a lot of coverage for most of the roles, but would definitely recommend you to look into the best practices and find the ones that's really important to your role, and also give it a read for other roles, as we're all collaborating, participating in this system, and collaboration is always the most important thing. And yeah, I'll pause here and give you a second, and please feel free to use the Q&A chat to put your comments or thoughts.
As you can see, the system and the principles are really meant to incorporate every single type of actor. There's something for everybody in this list of principles and best practices. Even if one of the exact system elements you think, hey, this may not apply to me, we'd recommend you give it another read. Generally, down in the bullet points underneath each principle, you might be able to suss out the different actors that each of the, and kind of supply chain components that each of the elements is oriented towards. And it's really that broad-based nature of this whole document that really brings the strength and the applicability. That's what we've been hearing from you, is that it's helping you develop your products. It's helping you strengthen your participation in book and claim systems. It's helping you communicate to your customers. It's helping your customers communicate up to even people within their organization who only have 5 minutes to engage with this really important work. So again, try and check out that link. I'm going to pass the baton to a colleague to talk about the Q&A here in just a second, but check out the link to the book and claim principles and best practices while we're getting into this Q&A. See if you can follow along to where some of our colleagues' questions are, and ultimately try and sign on. Again, it's the enthusiasm that we heard from you once you started reading this that caused us to open up this document. A lot of you weren't able to get your sign-ins by the original deadline to get inside the PDF. That's why we're opening it up again. Right on. So we're going to move on into Q&A, and I'll pass the microphone to Claire.
Thanks, Quentin. Hi, everyone. I'm Claire Doherty. I'm also with RMI here. Thanks for joining us today. As Quentin mentioned, briefly, I'll reiterate again, I've dropped the link to both the document and the form to sign on in the Q&A bar. We also welcome you to add any more questions in there. I've already seen that there are 2 questions that came earlier in the presentation. These are fairly specific, but happy to answer them live too off the bat. And then I have a few things I'd like to ask my team as folks take some time to populate some more questions in. The first question, likely directed here at Laura, our internal registry expert. Would you mind providing a bit more of based on the second question here, a registry landscape. How do things look today? What exists? How does this transparency and governance type stuff work? To sort of address the question there from Pablo in the Q&A.
Thanks, Claire. So to Pablo's second question, will registries be public? How will transparency be ensured? The RSB registry, for example, cannot be accessed until an account is created. This is something that varies across the spectrum of registries and also by mode today. Today, we're seeing the bulk of registries in addressing sustainable aviation fuel directly as an intervention for the aviation sector, but also more and more registry development in the maritime space, and then starting to see more work in the heavy duty trucking space as well. There's a bit of a spectrum of transparency and public access right now because registries are fundamentally, designed to be containers for relatively proprietary information, kind of like a bank account for certificates. Complete public access of the information within them is not something that any registries today provide, but some are providing more public access of, for example, the information that's retired. So information about certificates that have been retired or canceled on behalf of a specific beneficiary to provide the market with more visibility over kind of what exactly is behind a certificate, who's buying what, and to what extent. So many registries today are choosing to display a public retirement set of information, but this also differs between the market today.
Thank you, Laura, for diving in. Broader question for my whole team, and I'll leave it all to you to provide your 2 cents across the board here. I'm curious, so we know now that the principles and best practices are out for review. We can download them, we can read them. What do you recommend that our different stakeholders, whether they be a fuel producer or a certificate buyer or an infrastructure developer, what should they do next after you download the document and give it a read? What's the best way to engage with this list and integrate it into their operations overall?
Quentin, would you like to take this one, or I can?
Sure. Yeah, happy to take it. Yeah, we have received that question, and we know that not some folks get the feel they're like, well, this portion isn't really for me. I don't know how that relates to what I do see that applies to what I'm doing, and that's on purpose. Again, as you saw in kind of the previous slide, there are a wide spectrum of actors that are involved in these book and claim systems, and it's a challenge, but it's also the kind of the specialty of this sector that to be able to describe how all of the roles come together to create a high integrity book and claim system. So if you are a shipper with cargo moving around in the heavy transport sector, certain elements of say dispute resolution suggestion for a registry naturally wouldn't apply to you in terms of you as a system developer. That's something that ultimately the registry and the tracking and tracing system developer would be in charge of. But that element and that knowledge that those operators are using that principle and applying the best practices to create a robust system for you ensures that you and your colleagues and all of your customers and the kind of the ultimate end user of that value chain claim can walk into your decarbonization plan feeling more confident that when you procure book and claim units, when you collaborate with other operators through these systems, that it is truly a robust transaction and you are participating in real decarbonization. So to that point, we would recommend that you go through each of the principles and best practices and try and maybe first pick out, okay, which one of these bullet points is pointed at me as a book and claim actor. if you occupy a few different positions within systems, you know, if say you're a carrier, as many of you are, and you heard from a couple carriers earlier today, you know, there's going to be a little bit more attention to you as a product producer, someone who is generating low emission transport services, might be generating book and claim units on one of those registries. You know, then there's going to be a little bit more applicability because you're going to be using that registry most likely. You're going to be using and be more of a primary actor in that certification role. You know, you're going to be engaging an independent or third party in order to validate, verify, and assure your book and claim units. And so you're going to be paying attention to probably a larger block of those principles and best practices. That'd be the first primary way to incorporate them. And also remember that this is a reflection of the current state of the book and claim community. This is a snapshot in time, and you can reread that. Recommend you reread the introduction of the document to kind of place some of this in context. You know, this is a document to try and guide you to improve and go higher in your book and claim practices inside your organization. But it is a snapshot in time and just an indication of the overall consensus. A little bit of that context placing again as well.
Thank you, Quentin,
Yeah,
for
Claire,
the thorough answer.
What next question popped in? I think I saw a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another question from Pablo that I'd like to address to our group here. It's taking us in a different direction after that very high level broad question and drilling into some more details. He asked, will the chain of custody system scope include the traceability of fuels after bunkering? Like when it's delivered, by who receives it, who consumes it, and where?
I can take this one. I've also put a response in the chat here, but note that this varies a bit by mode and by system. As far as the chain of custody norms and the LCA methodologies behind them, that's typically specified on a scheme level. So for example, the Roundtable on Sustainable Biomaterials or the International Sustainability and Carbon Certification System both hold a number of schemes that apply to the aviation and maritime context, for instance, that determine who is in the scope of the audit to determine what the environmental attributes are. And then that's a prerequisite, as we clarify in Principle 1 for booking and claiming. Book and claim systems do the work of specifying two things on that basis. One, what information needs to exist in order to create that certificate, and two, at what point a certificate can be produced or issued in a registry. So after fuel blending, after fuel production, after fuel delivery, or even after the transport activity is conducted. All of this differs a bit by mode and also differs beyond that a bit by system type. So we're seeing a spectrum there, all with their own pros and cons and solid rationales.
Great. Thank you, Laura, and thank you, team. With only 4 minutes to go, I want to make sure you leave some time to wrap things up and have a bit of closure here. So without further ado, I'll pass it back to my colleagues to close up the session. If you do have more questions, one more thing I'll add, feel free to reach out to us at any time. We're happy to email or respond asynchronously to anything else that might pop up. So thank you for listening in and for asking some questions. Quentin, I'll pass to you to wrap.
Right. A reminder, please sign on to the book and claim principles and best practices document. You know, is largely in part of many of you who said, oh, hey, we just couldn't quite get into that deadline that we originally posted, that we've opened this up. You know, it is our broad-based signal by signing on to this document as individuals, as organizations, that signal to the rest of this space that we are really aligned, that we are all practicing at a level that is in line and reflects the seriousness of the value chain claims that we're trying to make, the high integrity intent in participating in registries, in collaborating with colleagues, creating low emission solutions and applying them in your transportation space. This is really a community where we get to lend each other a hand and help each other up as we're implementing these systems. One of the challenges that we have, and that I will impart and ask you as a request as you move out into your next meeting and the rest of the world, is you've been here, you've learned about the book and claim principles and best practices, you're probably already practicing. Someone else in your organization maybe doesn't have the same perspective and the same experience and knowledge. We, at the same time as we advance and get more technical, get more in tune with exactly the best way to apply these indicators in our systems, let's make room for those newcomers as well. Let's make sure that we have space for those who are just starting to walk in the book and claim community, as well as clarifying those elements of those who are jogging or running already, so to say. July 25th, it may take a little bit of time for you to socialize some of these principles and best practices within your organization. That's, again, what we heard from some of you as the clock reached midnight here in Pacific time in the U.S. as we have that first deadline. We are here to answer questions. Secretariat at bookandclaimcommunity.org. And we're really excited to really take this document and have it be a cornerstone of not only this communication and conversation with you, but small groups, further community meetings. We're going to be referencing this document for the foreseeable future. Our next community-wide webinar will be September 5th. And of course, plenty of opportunity for excitement and good book and claim community activity in between. So a super thanks to you. We appreciate you joining.